When we talk about being Muslim, the first place we have to begin is not with labels, not with birth certificates, not with what our parents put on a form when we were born. We have to begin with the heart. Because at its core, faith is not inherited the way a last name is inherited. Faith is not absorbed through the walls of a house or the air of a culture. Faith begins with a conscious decision, one that every single human being must make for themselves. And that is why belief in Islam only has value when it is chosen. From the very beginning, Islam addresses the human being as a moral agent, someone capable of thought, reflection, and decision making. The Quran does not speak to robots or to people on autopilot. It speaks to minds that reason and hearts that weigh truth. That is why intention matters so deeply. Actions without intention are empty, and belief without sincerity is hollow. You can stand in prayer, you can recite the words, you can even look the part. But if the heart is absent, the choice was never made. Many people grow up around Islam. They grow up hearing the adhan, watching their parents pray, fasting in Ramadan because everyone else is fasting. And there is nothing wrong with that exposure. It is a blessing. But exposure is not the same as conviction. At some point, every person reaches a moment, whether quietly or dramatically, where they must ask themselves, do I actually believe this? Do I choose this path because it is true or because it is familiar? That moment, that internal reckoning, is where faith truly begins, and this is precisely why Islam rejects compulsion. Forced belief is a contradiction. You cannot coerce the heart. You cannot threaten someone into sincerity. If belief were meant to be imposed, there would be no test, no meaning, no growth. The struggle, the doubt, the search, these are not signs of weak faith. Often, they are signs of faith being born honestly. Choosing Islam means you accept that belief will cost you something. It may cost comfort, it may cost social approval, it may cost ease, but it also gives something far greater: clarity of purpose and a relationship with your Creator that is real, not performative. A chosen faith withstands questions. A chosen faith survives hardship. A chosen faith is alive, and the beauty of this is that the choice is not made once. It is made again and again. Every prayer is a choice. Every moral decision is a choice. Every time you walk away from what is easy toward what is right, you are choosing Islam all over again. Because in the end, faith that is not chosen is just noise. But faith that is chosen becomes transformation. Once we understand that faith begins with choice, the next thing we have to recognize is how Islam presents itself to the human being. Islam does not arrive with force in its hands. It arrives with guidance. It speaks, it invites, it reasons, but it never drags the heart against its will. The message is placed before you with clarity, and then you are left with dignity to decide. That in itself tells you something profound about how Allah views the human being. Guidance in Islam is not a threat, it is an offer. The Quran does not beg people to believe, nor does it chase them down. It lays out truth, consequences, mercy, and accountability, and then it steps back. You are not stripped of your agency. You are not reduced to blind obedience. You are respected enough to be allowed to walk away. That freedom is not a weakness in the religion. It is one of its greatest strengths. Think about it. If guidance were imposed, obedience would be meaningless. There would be no sincerity, no growth, no moral struggle. The value of belief comes precisely from the fact that you could have rejected it. Every time you choose to submit to Allah, you are doing so with awareness that you had another option. And that choice is what gives faith its weight. Islam constantly appeals to the intellect and the conscience. It asks you to reflect on creation, to observe patterns, to question false gods, to examine your own soul. It does not say, don't think. It says, think carefully. It does not say, follow blindly. It says, follow what is true. That is not coercion. That is an invitation to awaken. And yet, guidance is not guaranteed just because it is presented. That is another uncomfortable truth. You can hear the message and still turn away. You can understand it intellectually and still resist it emotionally. That responsibility lies with the individual. Islam is honest about that. It does not pretend that truth automatically changes hearts. Hearts change when they are willing. This is why accountability in Islam is deeply personal. You are not judged for what you were forced into, but for what you chose with clarity. Allah does not hold you responsible for ignorance you could not overcome, but He does hold you responsible for arrogance that refuses guidance when it becomes clear. Guidance knocks. It does not break down the door. And there is mercy even in that, because guidance is not a single moment. It is a process. People arrive at faith at different speeds, through different struggles, with different questions. Islam makes space for that journey. It does not demand perfection on day one. It asks for sincerity and effort. It asks you to keep turning back, even if you stumble. So when someone says Islam is restrictive, remember this. Nothing is more restrictive than being forced to believe without understanding. Islam does the opposite. It frees you to choose truth knowingly, to submit willingly, and to walk a path that only has meaning because you stepped onto it yourself. Because guidance only transforms when it is accepted, not imposed. After recognizing that faith begins with choice, and that guidance is offered rather than imposed, we arrive at a reality that is both grounding and challenging. Choosing Islam is not a moment frozen in time. It is not something you did once and then placed on a shelf. It is something you live every single day. Being Muslim is not a static identity. It is an ongoing decision that shows up in the ordinary, unglamorous moments of life. There is a misconception that once a person says the Shahada, the journey is complete. In reality, that is where the journey begins. Faith is not maintained by memory, but by practice. The heart does not stay alive on yesterday's sincerity. It needs renewal. That is why worship in Islam is repetitive, not because Allah needs reminding, but because we do. Each prayer is an opportunity to say again, I choose you over distraction. I choose obedience over impulse. That repetition is not monotony, it is reinforcement. Choosing Islam daily means that belief moves from the tongue to the limbs. It shapes how you speak when no one is watching, how you earn when cutting corners would be easier, how you treat people who cannot benefit you. These choices are rarely dramatic. Most of the time they are quiet. No one applauds you for lowering your gaze, for holding your temper, for walking away from something haram when no one would ever know. But those moments are where faith proves itself real, and this is where sincerity is tested. It is easy to identify as Muslim when it costs nothing. It is harder when it asks you to change habits, to unlearn ego, to restrain desire. Islam does not just call you to believe in Allah, it calls you to align your life with that belief, and alignment takes effort. Some days you will feel strong, other days you will feel tired, distracted, or spiritually numb. That does not mean you have failed, it means you are human. The daily choice of Islam is not about perfection, it is about persistence. You will fall short, you will miss prayers, you will make decisions you regret. But every time you turn back, every time you say, I still choose this path, you are renewing your faith. That return is itself an act of worship. Allah does not ask for flawlessness, He asks for honesty and return. And perhaps the most powerful part of this daily choice is that it builds character over time. Islam shapes you slowly, deliberately, through consistency. It teaches discipline through prayer, gratitude through fasting, humility through charity, and patience through struggle. None of this happens overnight, but over years of choosing Islam again and again, you become someone different, not louder in faith, but deeper. So being Muslim is not about what you claimed once in the past. It is about what you choose today and tomorrow and the day after that. Because a faith that is chosen daily is a faith that endures. As we continue this conversation about choice, we have to confront a fear that many people quietly carry, the fear of questioning. Somewhere along the way, some were made to feel that asking questions is dangerous, that doubt is a sign of weak faith, that curiosity somehow threatens belief. but Islam tells a very different story. In reality, questioning is not the enemy of faith. Unexamined belief is. A faith that has never been tested is a faith that has never truly been chosen. From the very first revelation, Islam appealed to the mind. It did not ask people to shut their intellects off at the door. It asked them to look, to reflect, to think deeply about existence, purpose, and truth. The Quran repeatedly challenges the listener. Will you not reason? Will you not reflect? That language alone tells you something powerful. Islam expects questions. It anticipates them. It invites them. When a person chooses Islam seriously, they do not do so by avoiding hard questions, but by walking straight into them. Why do I believe? What does this mean for my life? How do I reconcile struggle, suffering, and divine wisdom? These are not modern questions. These are human questions, and Islam never pretended they didn't exist. Instead, it provided a framework where faith and intellect work together, not against each other. There is a difference between doubt that searches for truth and doubt that searches for excuses. Islam makes room for the first. The companions themselves asked questions. They struggled to understand rulings. They wrestled with their own weaknesses, and they were not condemned for that. What mattered was sincerity. What mattered was the direction of the heart. Were they asking to grow or asking to run? When belief is inherited but never explored, it becomes fragile. The first challenge shakes it. The first criticism unsettles it. But a belief that has been questioned honestly becomes grounded. It knows why it stands. It does not panic when confronted with complexity. It does not collapse under scrutiny. That kind of faith is not loud or defensive. It is calm and confident. And this is crucial for understanding Islam as a choice. You cannot truly choose something you have never examined. Choice requires awareness. It requires understanding what you are committing to and why. Islam does not fear that process. Truth does not fear investigation. Falsehood does. At the same time, questioning does not mean endless paralysis. Islam is not calling for doubt to become an identity. There comes a moment when a person reaches clarity, where the heart settles, and the choice is made. After that, questions do not disappear, but they no longer control you. They deepen you. They refine you. So if you are someone who has questioned, struggled, or wrestled internally, know this. That struggle may be the very thing that makes your faith sincere. Islam was never meant to be believed blindly. It was meant to be believed consciously, because a faith you arrive at honestly is a faith you can stand on firmly. There is another layer to this idea of choice that we have to be honest about, and it is one that many people feel but rarely articulate. For a lot of us, Islam is deeply intertwined with culture, family expectations, and social pressure. We grow up hearing, this is who we are, this is how we do things, this is what our family believes. And while culture can be a vehicle for faith, it can never be a substitute for it. At some point, every person has to separate Islam from everything that merely surrounds it. Culture can introduce you to Islam, but it cannot carry your Iman for you. Family can model faith, but it cannot believe on your behalf. When religion remains only a cultural identity, it becomes fragile. It survives as long as the environment supports it. But the moment that environment changes, when you move away, when you encounter different worldviews, when you face pressure to conform, it begins to crack. That is because it was never internalized as a personal choice. Islam, however, was never meant to be confined to ethnicity or geography. Its message crossed borders from the very beginning. It spoke to the human condition, not to a specific culture. That universality tells us something important. Being Muslim is not about fitting into a cultural mold, but about aligning yourself with truth. When Islam is reduced to culture, its depth is lost. When Islam is chosen personally, its meaning is restored. There are people who follow cultural practices without understanding their spiritual purpose. They perform rituals because that is what is expected, not because that is what they believe in their hearts. Over time, this disconnect breeds resentment or apathy. Faith begins to feel heavy, restrictive, and hollow, not because Islam is those things, but because it was never embraced as a conscious commitment. Choosing Islam means stepping beyond external pressure and asking an uncomfortable but necessary question. If no one were watching, would I still choose this? If my family were not here, if my community were not around, if this identity no longer earned approval, would I still stand by it? That question is not a threat to faith, it is a gateway to sincerity, and for many this process is painful. It may involve unlearning cultural baggage that was wrongly attached to religion. It may involve redefining what faith looks like away from performance and toward purpose. But that pain is often the birth of something authentic. A faith that survives without pressure is a faith that is real. When Islam becomes a personal choice, it stops being about defending an identity and starts being about living a truth. It no longer needs validation from people because it is anchored in conviction. That kind of faith does not collapse when culture shifts, when trends change, or when approval disappears. Because when Islam is chosen beyond culture, it becomes rooted in the soul. And once a person reaches this point, where Islam is chosen freely, examined honestly, separated from culture, and lived daily, they come face to face with the final reality of that choice, responsibility. Islam does not offer a faith of convenience. It offers a faith of purpose, and purpose always comes with weight. The moment you choose Islam, you are not just choosing a belief system, you are choosing a way of living that holds you accountable for how you treat Allah, how you treat others, and how you treat yourself. Choice in Islam is empowering, but it is never careless. You are free to choose, but you are also responsible for what that choice produces. Islam teaches that life is meaningful because actions matter. Words matter, intentions matter, nothing is random and nothing is wasted. When you choose Islam, you accept that your life is no longer drifting. You are walking towards something, and every step counts. This responsibility is not meant to suffocate you. It is meant to anchor you. Without responsibility, freedom becomes chaos. Islam gives freedom direction. It tells you that discipline is not oppression, but protection. That limits are not punishments, but boundaries that preserve dignity. When you choose prayer, fasting, charity, honesty, and restraint, you are not losing freedom. You are reclaiming control over your soul. And yes, this responsibility is demanding. Islam asks you to stand for justice even when it is inconvenient. It asks you to be truthful even when lying would benefit you. It asks you to show mercy even when anger feels justified. It asks you to answer for your choices, not hide behind excuses. That is not easy, but it is meaningful. A life without accountability may feel light, but it is empty. A life with responsibility may feel heavy, but it is purposeful. Choosing Islam also gives your struggles context. Hardship is no longer meaningless suffering. It becomes a test with wisdom behind it. Success is no longer entitlement. It becomes a trust. Time is no longer something you kill. It becomes something you invest. When you choose Islam, your life gains coherence. Everything fits into a larger story, one that does not end at death. And through all of this, Islam balances responsibility with mercy. You are accountable, yes, but you are never abandoned. You are expected to strive, not to be flawless. You are expected to return, not to despair. Every sincere effort is seen. Every quiet struggle is known. Every choice toward good, no matter how small, carries weight. So in the end, being Muslim is not about being born into something, pressured into something, or trapped by something. It is about willingly stepping into a life of meaning, discipline, compassion, and accountability.